So in the previous video, we actually started with the basic setup of the YouTube application. Then we went through and added a very base layout that's going to actually display the YouTube video itself. So it's now time to actually add some code into the YouTube activity class and get that actually working correctly. So we need to make sure that the YouTube activity.java class is on the screen, as mine is there now. And what we're going to do is have a look at the onCreate method. And you can see that at the moment we've actually commented out some of that code. So we didn't actually need it. We've really only left the super.onCreate and also the set content view. So the onCreate is actually called as part of the activity when it actually opens on the screen. So as a result, it's a good place to initialize the YouTube player. So what we need to do is start off by referring to the YouTube player view that we actually added into our content, which was content_youtube.xml. So we'll be needing to actually refer to this in code. And what we didn't do was we didn't actually add an ID to that. So what we need to do is add an ID, and so therefore we can then link the two. We can actually link it up to our YouTube activity. I'm going to come in here and type in Android :ID equals @ +ID/ we're going to call this YouTube _player. Doesn't really matter what you call it after the slash, so long as you use that exact same name in the actual code itself. So next we're going to go back to our YouTube activity code, our class I should say. So just below here I'm actually going to start by typing YouTube with a capital T player view, and we're going to call it YouTube player view equals, and it's a YouTube player view. So we're casting that so that we're returning the right view type. And it's going to be find view by ID, and it's going to be r.id. It should be YouTube _player, and that should be whatever you typed in the content_youtube.xml. So in this case, it's YouTube. So we're actually linking that. We're linking to that now. So we've actually formed a link to the layout that we've set up. So that's only just formed the link. We haven't actually told it to initialize itself. And in order to actually initialize the YouTube player, we actually have to pass it the Google API key. And that's this little key that we typed in the previous video, and then we actually had a TBA in there to be added. So we're going to put that code in there now, but it's still not going to work ultimately until we've actually created that Google API key. What I'm going to do is going to type in YouTube player view .initialize, or select .initialize. And it's going to be Google _API key. And it also wants a listener. Now that basically is some code that we're going to be adding to this class, and it directs the YouTube player what it needs to do after it's initialized. In other words, it calls back some code that we're writing in this class to sort of say it's initialized successfully or there was an error. So we're just going to type this. And what that means is that we're going to be writing that function in here. And this is where ultimately the YouTube player, the API, is going to come back and call back this code from here. So we've done that. That's what we need to do to actually initialize that. So now what we need to do is fix these errors. So it's coming up and actually saying our YouTube activity must be declared abstract or implement abstract method on initialized failure. There's also another one as well, on initialized success. So it's sort of saying you need both of those, but it's only showing the one error message. So we're going to come down here and hold down and do Command N to generate, and the generate is in this menu here. So you'll be whatever the keystroke is there for your operating system. On a Mac, it's Command N. I'm going to click on Implement Methods, and you'll notice I get two options here. And Android Studio has come up and said, I found these two methods that you need to overwrite in order to fulfill this interface, and that's what the YouTube.onInitialized listener is. It's actually an interface, and it's actually sort of saying these are the methods that you need to implement in order to use this YouTube base activity. So I'm going to click on OK, and notice how the error went away when I actually did that. So it's happy now as far as ensuring that we've actually correctly used the methods, but of course we haven't actually added any code to those methods yet. We need to do those to make sure that we do something when the initialization happens. Now there's two options here, on initialization success. That would obviously be when we've been successful. When we're coming back here to the initialize, remember we used .this. So this is going to be called if the initialize was successful. In other words, we passed and used a valid Google API key and there weren't any errors initializing. So for our code, what we're going to do is just put a message in here to say that it's succeeded. You don't really need to do anything else. But this would be a place where if you had any other initialization that required the YouTube player to be initialized, maybe you'd put some code in there for that. In this case, we're just going to put a message, toast.makeText, pass this for the context, and we're going to actually just put a message, initialized YouTube player successfully. Then we'll put a toast.length_long, so we can see it for a while, and put a .show. So that's literally all we're going to do. If it succeeded, then we're going to actually show a message. And what we're going to do is do the same for failure. So if for some reason it didn't initialize, there was an error, or maybe there's an internet connection problem, or errors of that nature, we're going to actually put something here to indicate that it failed. We'll put failed to initialize YouTube player. So we've now got a message whether it succeeded and failed. So in line with what I was saying before on whether we were successful with initialization, what we're going to do here is we're actually going to put some extra code in here. And we're going to actually set up the listeners for the actual player state and various events that the YouTube player is going to send to us when we're playing videos or trying to play videos, stopping and starting and so on. So this is the area where we actually implement that code, or we actually set the code so that the YouTube player knows where to go to actually send us the results. So I'm going to type in YouTube player dot set playback event listener. Actually, we'll do the state change listener first. And I'm going to set that one to player state change listener. We're going to add that variable shortly. We need to do the same for YouTube player dot set playback event listener. That's going to be playback event listener, like so. And this Boolean area here is really sort of poorly named automatically by Android Studio. So I'm going to change that to was restored. And that's actually what it is. It actually comes back and tells us whether we're actually coming back from a restored session or not. And if that's the case, what we actually want to do is, if we're not coming back from a restore, we want to play the video. So to do that, I'm going to put in if not was restored. I'm going to type YouTube player dot Q video, which is the command to actually play a video. We're going to pass this YouTube underscore video underscore ID, which was the ID which ultimately is going to point to the YouTube video we want to play. Okay, so moving on. So what we're going to do now is we need to set up these two variables so that we can actually set up the listeners so that we can actually start using those in our code. So what we're going to do is, again, we've just established that on initialization success actually sets up the listeners and queues up the video. So we need to actually implement this part next. So to do that, so starting on a new line, we're going to type private YouTube player dot playback. I'm going to do event listener first. Type in the variable name, playback event listener equals new. If I type in PL, notice how it's got the curly braces. So if I actually press enter there, that should actually add some code for us automatically. And you can see it added all this code for us by just me doing that. Firstly, I'm going to make this valid by actually putting a semicolon there. And this has added all the various methods that are going to be called back depending on the state of playing a video. For example, if we're playing the video, when we start playing it, this method is going to be called, whether it's been paused, stopped, etc. And we'll be talking more about those shortly. But for now, we needed to actually create this event listener, which we've actually done. So notice how this is now showing correctly. It's no longer an error because we've actually implemented that. So let's do the same for the other one, which was the player state change listener. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to type YouTube dot player state change listener, and we'll call that player state change listener equals new. PL again, we get the same thing crop up. I can just press enter there and it should add the methods for us. And these are different events to do with loading the video when the video is starting and stopping. A little bit different to the stopping and pausing, etc. But we'll be talking more about that again. So first things first, I'm going to come down here and just press the semicolon again, or type in a semicolon to make it valid. We've now got a valid class. You can see we've got no errors anymore. So that's good. We fixed that up. Now, in terms of what each of these methods do, it can be actually wise to actually go and check this link out. So I'm going to actually go back to my browser and I'm just pasting the link again. We could have actually just gone back and done it that way, but there's actually reference here. So if I actually click on reference, and on the left-hand side, you can see we've got playback event listener. If I click on that, that's going to give you a summary about what we're trying to do here. You can see the on buffering, on pause, on playing, and it actually tells you what is actually going to happen and at what point these methods are actually called. So that's the playback event listener, and likewise for the player state change listener, similar thing when things happen, and it just gives you a bit of an overview. So I do recommend this as a habit to actually start learning to check some of this documentation, because that's really how you find out how a particular library works, is by looking at some of these methods. And of course you can click into them if you want to find out more information. It's really quite useful to go in there and find out exactly the information on how to use it and what it actually does. And depending on the actual library you've got, sometimes the documentation is great, sometimes it's not so good, but at least it's a base start for you to sort of figure out. how to get started with these things anyway. So basically these methods are called when your YouTube player is buffering or it's playing or whatever the particular process was, and our code ultimately will be called because of that. So really, essentially, the YouTube API is tracking the YouTube player video and giving us the ability to actually process that based on that. So going back to our code again. So we come up here to the first one on playing. What we're going to do is we're just going to actually put some toast messages in here when a particular method is being invoked, just so we can see when we're playing the video that these are actually being called. So I'm going to start by putting the first one, toast.makeText, and we'll use YouTube activity.this for the context, and we'll actually put, let's just try good video is playing okay, comma, toast.length long, and of course we need a dot show on the end as well. So we're doing that when the video starts playing, and let's do another one for paused as well. So for paused, or something like video has paused, like so. Likewise for the player state change listener, we can put a few of those in there as well. So let's do it when on ad started is actually showing. So when an ad actually appears on the screen, we can put click add now, make the video creator rich. And let's do the same for on video started, just so we can put a message in there indicating that the video has actually started. So I'm going to do something like, let's keep a basic video has started. So that's basically it. You can see that we didn't actually implement a lot of code. Obviously, when we actually created these listeners, a lot of code was created for us, but we've just put in just a little bit of text here to indicate that we want to actually take advantage of these spots. But obviously, in a real YouTube application, you might want to do other things. Like, for example, if they actually pause the video, there could be an option for you to pop up a window to give them other options, to go back to a menu or something like that. But we've kept it really basic just to get you to become familiar with how to use a library like this, and also how to actually play YouTube videos. So I'm going to actually end the lecture here. And in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually start and create this Google API key, because we need that key to actually put into our application to ultimately get it working. And then after that, we'll actually get the YouTube video ID as well and put that in there. And we should actually be able to start playing a video. So I'll see you in that next video.